Hi everyone, I'm Lori Lewis. Welcome to my virtual house party. How about that? House party. I kind of like that, Bob. All right. He's being good and not talking over me. So we have a special guest today, along with my co-host, Coach Ray Scott and Bob Bennett. And I'll remind you a little more about their background in a moment. But to begin with, we have a special guest that I have admired for many years, and now Coach and Bob are fans of as well. Ruth Naomi Floyd. Ruth, welcome to our program.
Hello, it's great to be here. It's great to meet Bob, and I've got Coach I've known because I'm an avid NBA fan, and I'm an avid fan of NBA history. So it is my deep honor to be on the same screen with you, Coach.
Well, thank you. The pleasure is all mine. To my Philadelphia friend from 18th and Catherine and Fitzwater.
Do you want to know where? Oh, I can't say online. When we get offline, I'm going to tell you where I live. I'm South Philly.
Yes.
I'm a stone's throw away from that place, but I'll tell you later.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we have a lot to talk about, but I am going to start this time by reading a little bit of Ruth's bio, because she is such an artist and prolific in so many areas that she touches and is involved in, that I feel like it would do justice. I usually try to memorize, but there's too much to memorize. So a vocalist and composer for over 20 years, Ruth Naomi Floyd has dedicated a discography explicitly dedicated to sacred jazz. Well, that's not entirely updated, is it? Because you're also doing some other special projects, so we'll get to that in a moment. She leads her own multifaceted ensemble, and her recordings consist primarily of original compositions. Blessed with a soaring mezzo-soprano voice, beautiful voice, critics praise Ruth's music for its distinctive sound of progressive ensemble jazz that is seamlessly blended with a message of hope, faith, redemption, and love. And also, Ruth is a music educator as well. Ruth is a director of jazz studies at Cairn University in Pennsylvania, and also an adjunct and artist in residence at Temple University. And hope this is all updated. And also, where did I go with that? She also teaches music at the City School in Philadelphia. And again, Ruth, I mean, you'll see that her faith really informs the work that she does. And she's also an amazing photographer, and she writes, and she's one of my heroes. So again, welcome to our program. And that's just scraping the surface. We'll get some more. But Ruth, you're in Philly, right? Which is Ray's hometown.
Yes, born and raised, Philly girl through and through.
And you by the way, your room is beautiful. What is the artwork behind you?
Oh, that's from a young man. I no longer teach at the City School. I'm teaching mostly at university, performances and concerts and lectures. I couldn't keep up through schools. So I'm just teaching at the two universities now. But when I stopped a year ago, and one of my dear students, really brilliant mind, artistic, Aaron Henry, did a self-portrait. So all of those images, the portrait is made of squares. So he took time to draw it and paint it and then put it together. And it's huge. It's the size of a window. And he's been really interested in photography, and he wanted to upgrade to his camera, so we bartered. So I love this portrait of him, and it just reminds me of many, many things along my journey, my ancestry, my culture, my family, my kinfolk. And so I look at it, and this is my art room / office. And we live in a house that's 1889, and all the original artwork is still there. So that's a 3-door closet with the original artwork, and it's just wonderful. I'm really grateful. Yeah.
It's a pleasure to know you and to have learned some things about you over the years. And we've actually never met in person.
No.
So everything we've done is online, and I have multiple friendships like that. But Ruth is really special to me because it seems like everything that you do, not only your faith, but you look at everything with an artistic eye.
Yes, I'm a seeker of beauty, and I know who is the most beautiful one, the one who created out of nothing. And so my great-great-grandmother, who lived to be 109, her mother was enslaved African in America. And the story tells goes that because she was tall, 6'2", taller than most humans on the surrounding areas, the master made her to be example, to break her and to have her be broken. And so every day from sun up to sundown, she put on the bridle, put on the shackles, put on the bridle of a really of a horse, and she pulled that gosh, it leaves me, that plow every day. It wasn't beneficial to the master plantation because she was slow. She could move as much as a mule or as much of a horse, but she pulled that. And in her, she died very young, 28, after giving birth to my great-great-grandmother, who lived to be 109. And her spine was in the shape of an S. So her organs could no longer function. But one of the stories that my great-grandmother remembered was that she always searched for beauty. So coming from the fields to her cabin, she'd pick up a stone, a rock, a leaf, a flower, a weed, a stick, and place it on the butcher table and say, "This is beautiful." I don't know how, when you're dehumanized, not seen and viewed as God's creation, you're oppressed, and a prisoner, how from the place of that oppression to the place where you have a wee bit of rest, you search for beauty and celebrate it. And so I really feel my thirst, my hungering, my passion, my seeking for beauty comes from the most beautiful one, our Lord, but also from her, to seek for beauty in the midst of terrible times. No matter what's going on, to find beauty in the midst. And so, yeah, I'm a seeker of that, and I would be lost without it, especially as an artist,
Coach, I'm looking to you because, wow, there's so many ways we can take the conversation with Ruth, but I'm wondering what's going through your head right now.
Well, when you of seekers, I guess, again, we're kindred spirits from South Philly, because I'm sitting here thinking of the gift that my mother and grandmother gave me, because I was raised in a matriarchal society. Great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, all alive at the same time.
Yes.
And what they did for me, Ruth, was they put into my head to always be a seeker of wisdom and truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that has stayed my life from the time that I was a young basketball player at Marian Anderson, to the halls of the Madison Square Gardens or the Los Angeles Coliseums or whatever. The one prevailing thing inside of me that was placed there was the women that gave me that strength and foresight and courage to always seek wisdom and truth. And it carried me a long way. I mean, I was a quantified athlete. I was not an Olympian or an incredibly great athlete. I was a kid that just loved the game. But in truly loving the game gave back to me. And it just stayed part of my life. But in listening to you, it touched me. I got chills when you said that, how you were a seeker, and that's so, it's such a connector. And that's, Laurie, that's what was going through my inimitable brain.
And Bob, as a songwriter, and one of the best songwriters I've ever known in my life, you're just being exposed to Ruth's work. And I had you watch a speech that she did. Where was it at, Bob?
was at Biola. It was the one you did about 8 to 12 years ago, or no, 8 to 9 years ago, I think.
Yes.
You had me at hello. I mean, it was just such a great talk. And I in sort of prepping for this, what's gonna happen is as soon as we get done talking today, I'm gonna go find out more, and I'm gonna kick myself that I didn't do more on the front end of it, because I've only just scratched the surface of a little bit of who you are and what you do. But you know, as a musician, I was just, you know, making the connection between, in the talk that you gave, you were talking about the connection between, you know, pain, sorrow, oppression, these sorts of things, and the connection between that and the and artistic expression, and that these, you know, that the music was like the objects of beauty brought in from the field. The music is something that, you know, no one can control your apprehension of that. You know, the beautiful things, or the beautiful songs, or the songs of despair, or whatever. The one thing I was totally knocked out by when I was listening to you was reminding me, of course, of the roots of the blues in all of American music, because I was exposed to that when I was camped out next to the record player. I was hearing a lot of that stuff when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful irony of the fact that the blues music talks about how we're not doing so good, and hearing it makes you feel a whole lot better. I love the push and pull of those two things together, and I sort of picked that up a little bit from what you were, if I was listening correctly, I picked that up a little bit from what you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the roots of most American music, not even just African American music, are the African American spirituals. So again, birth and oppression, the spirituals were a quest for dignity, a quest for hope, quest for liberation. But when the Emancipation Proclamation came, when you read the slaves' testimonies and narratives and their stories, they thought they would be free in a way that we're still not even free today. And I think, you know, the two stories from yesterday of Central Park and today in Minneapolis points to that. But they thought they would be equal and American citizens and viewed as 100% human. And when that happened, they said, you know what, we have to change our song. And so they started going inward and just talking about the burden of life. They talked about the freedom that was promised but not delivered. And so they began singing about life. The blues are just about life, the valleys of life. But there's always a line, there's always a glimmer of hope in the blues. And so it's just powerful. I love the blues for many reasons. One of the main reasons is that it points us to the blues books of the Bible. I mean, you think of the prophet Job. He certainly had the blues. I mean, you know, but then it points us to the greatest blues line ever sung. And don't get me wrong, I love blues singers. I love those in between notes. I love those bent notes. I love those, what some call simple chords, but where you place them is not as simple. It's complex. But I love the greatest line ever sung by the greatest blues singer that says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That is the blues. That is the blues. And so the beauty is that no matter what this life brings, we can hold on. There's an old gospel song, hold on until your change comes. Just keep holding on. And so that we can hold on. But blues tells the truth about this life and this path we call life. And there's all of us, if we've lived long enough, we've experienced the blues.
Ray, you see why I love this woman. I mean, man, an artist, and she's such an intellect too, but yes, the faith that comes out of her heart is just, it just blows me away, the way she makes these connections.
Ruth, when you of the many things that you do, and there are a lot of them, did music kind of come first, or did things kind of show up simultaneously, or what's the arc of your development with all the things that you do and are good at?
I'm a daughter of a Black Baptist preacher. 3 girls, had to sing, better sing. So we grew up singing in my dad's ministry and certainly the church. And then in our home, we heard, there was no secular music allowed at all. But we grew up listening to, Marian Anderson. We grew up listening to Leontine Price. We grew up listening to the Hawkins singers. So it was gospel and classical music. And so it was in me. Both my parents were the products of the Depression. And so before they even met, they made a vow to each other that they would, by any means necessary, have their children, their offspring, learn music professionally and properly, if you will. I don't know that I agree with that term, properly, but in a kind of education system that's available. And so, I just lost my father a month ago and my mom 5 years ago. And I'm just so grateful for them, because there were many nights that we ate the same meal, rice and beans or whatever, but music lessons got paid for. And so each of my sisters, there's 3 girls, I'm the middle, we each play piano and then 2 other instruments and sing. And so I'm grateful for that. And then along with that came visual arts, painting, and then photography. And then, being an educator, and then also an AIDS worker and working with the trans community and all that. My parents, I remember my father and mother sitting me down when they sensed I had some sort of talent, or hopefully some kind of talent. And they said, what do you do when you're not behind the microphone, when you're not behind a flute, not behind a piano? Matters. What are you giving in addition to this? And I know you understand, Coach. What are you doing for the community when you're not on the court? And so my parents were very firm about, how are you giving back in a different way? And so social justice work and my art and music go hand in hand, and it keeps me authentic. I don't think I would be able to do one without the other. It's a barometer whether I'm off kilter or not. And it keeps focus on the community, and it keeps the focus on loving my neighbor and what I'm doing for others than just, I'm an artist, I must do what I do. You have to do that, Laura, that as a vocalist and someone who performs, you have to, have your craft grow and your talents grow, but it also keeps the focus on others too. So it was, I say I took music in with my mother's milk. It was like, I'm so grateful.
All right, Coach, I know you're itching to talk here, so I'm giving you the...
It's like I'm in class and I'm just drinking this knowledge in and life, because so much of our community that we came from, and this is a kind of a sisterhood for me to listening to Ruth, Naomi. This is real, like out of my evolution. Up in churches, I was as a first grader, I was a Methodist at 17th and Bainbridge.
Wow.
And then as I progressed to 5th grade, I became a Catholic school kid at 12th and Lombard, and on the others across Broad Street. And I started out at E.M. Stanton at 17th and Christian. So this womb that we lived in as children has always interested me about Philadelphia, because Philadelphia always, as I've gone to other communities, the one consistent thing about Philadelphia was always the sense of Christianity and the sense of history. 2 things that you could always find the cats talking about on the corner, and you can embellish it in any way you wish, but at the base of it, your faith, being raised a Christian in this Christian home, and really knowing your roots, as we used to say, knowing your history. And I just remember that. And that really stayed within me. In fact, when Laurie and I were talking about you, Ruth, we were talking about your love of Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
Talking about the blues.
Yes.
You know, and I said, you know, one of my favorite pieces about Frederick Douglass that people don't talk about is that he was aligned with Harriet Beecher Stowe. Yes. That he published a newspaper. And I was like, all these little known facts. I mean, and I said that he was the first, discussing this with Laurie, that he was our first diplomat. And he was a diplomat without portfolio, you know, but he just created this diplomacy. And I said, man, that's something that we were given in Philadelphia. You know, that I remember as South Philly kids, we were diplomatic enough to go to West Philly and to North Philly, because you had to have a subtle diplomacy about you to exist in these communities, because they were all separated communities. So yes. As I listen to you, those things just kind of are in my spirit, and listening and taking it in as how you progressed and walked through, as the kids, and I'm sure you hear it, as the kids say, you walked through the hood. How did you survive in the hood? And we all survive, but we survive because of those basic things that are put inside of us with respect to faith and a hunger. And my hunger was for history. You were an artist. An artist. And I pursued athleticism and trying to be an athlete, you know, and how you get there. But I bet $1 to a hole in a donut, we get there because of those basic tenets that were put in us as children. And when you talked about rice and beans, and there's the food thing again, Bob, but that's a tenet of us growing up. We're all connected to that. Yes. That's something we get what you mean when you make that statement.
I have a question for you both, and you can feel free to not answer this. Okay, I grew up, just briefly, the preface to the question is, I grew up Roman Catholic. And at the time, I wasn't as grateful for that as I am now. Now, I went through that teenage estrangement period where as soon as my parents couldn't make me go, I didn't. And then I kind of had that amorphous kind of, I believe there's God, but he's in my image and he doesn't really require too much of me. And he happens to agree with everything I want to do and don't do. And so I kind of drifted, away. There's that estrangement. And then when I was 22 years old, I started reading the New Testament. And I said to myself, my beef with the religion has nothing to do with Jesus. It has to do with the frailties and the nonsense of human beings, which is still the deal. But so all of that to say, did either of you go through a sort of period of estrangement, and then as soon as you could come back and kind of claim it as your own, as opposed to being parented or grandfathered into it, how was there that type of a sequence, or were you able to kind of maintain a thread all the way through?
Why don't you take that, Ruth, first?
And it may not be a binary choice, by the way. I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
Right. No, at 20, I was just surrounded by it. I was born into it. My father was a minister. He also was a urban worker. So he, during the late 60s and 70s, he passed away, and so many Philadelphians are grateful for him because he decided that he couldn't sit at home or in a church and combat the gang warfare that was going on through the 60s and 70s. So the Moroccos, the 12th and Oxford gang, all those were beefing. He's like, this is crazy. So he took his 3 little girls and wife and moved into 1911 Mount Vernon Street, which is now the art museum and millions of dollars a home. Then it was the hood. And so I was surrounded by Christianity, and I vividly remembering being sincere and making a confession to become a Christian. But at 19, I wanted to make sure that I knew Jesus for myself, that it wasn't riding the coattails of my parents, So at 19, I said to my parents, I want to take a month off from church and I really want to examine other religions. I wasn't turning away or putting Christianity on pause, as some people say. I just wanted to know that I knew that I knew that I knew. And I studied other religions, and I made one promise while looking for it, to look for one thing. And I couldn't find them in any other religions. And for me, the Garden of Gethsemane as a child, it was confusing. Like at 6 or 7, I grew up in the Rambo era. So like, if there's a point where Jesus needs to be Rambo, it's in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah.
And we find him crying, and we find him asking if this cup could pass. He knew the answer. I love that he still asks the question, because he allows us to say, can this cup pass? This cup of bitterness, this cup of trials and struggles in our life. We can ask that. We can pray that. But then we have to get up and say, as he did, not my will, but thine be done. But I just was confused. Why didn't he just like tear down the empire and sit on the throne? And as I got older, I came to love that story, because Jesus is transparent, and he shows us the art of the struggle. He shows us that even he who said in the old spiritual, prepare me a body, I'll go down and die. It's time. It's game day. It's time. And we find him asking if the cup could pass, but yet he moves on. And so Nietzsche says, I can't believe in a God who doesn't dance. And before I started this investigation or, looking into other religions, I said, I cannot believe in a God who hasn't suffered. I have to. My God, who I believe in, has to understand trials, has to understand the blues, has to understand excruciating pain, because I cannot follow that path if he has not gone before me. And I cannot go down this road called life and trusting in a God who doesn't walk alongside of me. And once I discovered that that's the heart and the soul of Christianity, but that's when, as the old folks say, I've been running on since. And I'm so grateful for that. My mother was not happy. My father overruled her and said she can do it. He was not happy that I did this. I think she was afraid,
Sure.
But I'm really grateful for that, because that is where it's the centrality of the cross, where beauty and ugliness and suffering and joy and triumph and defeat all happened. And I cannot serve a God. I will not serve a God who hasn't suffered. So that's what has kept me, and that's what made me become even more cemented in my walk.
And forgive me if was that the one thing that you did not find in other investigations? Was that the one thing, or am I misunderstanding?
No, that was the one thing starting. I thought, I was reading all these philosophers. I love poetry. I love philosophy. So I was reading and I remember Nietzsche just saying, I can't believe in a God who dance. I'm like, okay, my is so cool. But then I just thought, what is it that I couldn't believe? Yeah. And so it was that. So I went into, when I studied Islam and all the other religions, that's what I was looking for. A suffering God, a God who had suffered.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
Coach, I'm sorry, Bob.
No, that's okay. No, I could gas on, and we're not here to talk to me. I want to hear what Coach has to say, and then I'll weigh in if I think I have something we're saying.
If I could, Ruth, if you're ready, if you're prepared to sing for us today, are you
Sure.
set up for that? Coach, I want you to answer that question, but I think this would be a good spot to have her do a live song for us if she's willing. So.
Oh, yeah. Would love it.
So Coach will answer, and then I sing.
Oh, I will.
All right.
I will.
Okay.
When you talk, I think of the Catholic Church in terms of sustainability and how being raised a Roman Catholic, and then reaching, Bob, that's a good title for a chapter in the book, the era of estrangement, where we learn and learn and learn, and then we kind of pick things that we reject as we go into or come into our maturity. Mm-hmm. And when you said that, Bob, I too because of the discipline and definition of Catholicism, I reached that point where I wanted to deny its rigid hold on me. And I saw that my mother, who was one of the most admirable people that ever walked the planet for me, but my mother was what I would call Catholic. I'm talking novenas, confessionals, high mass, low mass, all of those things, all of those accoutrements that come with the Catholic faith. When I reached the age of real reason, and I'll go with you, Bob, 22, I rejected all of that. And because it was very heavy and very disciplined for me. But what I had come to in searching was hypocrisy, because I am a child of the 60s. And so this country in the 60s, the two eras in my mind that shaped the country, the United States of America, is the roaring 20s and the sizzling 60s, because that's when the earth really moved, in my opinion, in my investigation. And in the 60s, as the earth was moving, and I said, you know, I don't want to go to mass today. I'm going to stay in bed. I'm going to hang out with the boys up at 60th and media, you know, and just really cool to really hang out and then go play ball in the morning. I didn't go to mass. That was not, and I had lost that. But as I aged, I started coming back to faith, because we still have that basis of Christianity and the basis of history. And those kind of things come together if you honor them. So it came back to me, and what I did, my mother had two shocks. The one is where I said, I'm not going to mass. And the second one was when I said, I'm going to remarry and become a Lutheran. And so so then begins the study of Martin Luther and all of that. So my mom, just to end this quickly, my mom just said, I'm so disappointed, but I had her talk to my pastor at the Lutheran church, and my pastor, when I said, this is my mom, and she was going to church with me, me and our girls, Jennifer and our girls, and she said, he said to my mom, he said, you know, Mrs. Stevens, God loves us all. And that, for whatever reason, that gave her some shape of comfortability, because our parents, being who they are, they understand the value, and she understood the value of Christianity and walking with Jesus. That's, to her, that's what she was trying to give us.
Right.
And so that reconciliation was there, but that estrangement, Bob, was also there.
Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, see, I'm used to doing radio where, you know, we'd have pop and rock artists in, and we never got to have conversations really like this. So it's like my mind's going, wait, I want to ask Ruth more about Frederick Douglass, and I want her to sing, and I want Bob to sing, and I want Coach to talk. But so maybe just now, I think it would be a lovely time if you would share a song with us.
I was going to sing my song Mercy, which talks about beauty for ashes, but just in this conversation, I'm going to change it. It's a song I wrote called Surrounded, and the lyrics tell the story. All around I see the distance from the place where I first lived. Memories slowly fade across cross veils that once formed and covered me. Do 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 do. All around I see the distance from the place where I first lived. Memories slowly fade across veils that once formed and covered me. In the midst of all that was lost, I was floating in heavy seas. Living waters came, surrounded me, pulled me to the higher ground. Isn't it amazing? This love that lasts forever, isn't it lovely? The hand that guides me. And when this earthly life is over, in these moments, love survives. Do 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 do. Love survives. Love survives. Oh, love, it survives. Love survives. Love survives. Love survives. Love survives. Love survives. Love survives.
Oh my.
Okay, Bob.
Okay,
Wow.
so wait a minute. Hold on just a second.
Help.
Note to self, don't follow Ruth. Okay, all right, I got that down.
It's not true, my new friend.
You guys, well, first of all, it's like instruments. I don't need no stinking instruments.
Oh, Coach, she ruined my makeup here, so you got to take over for me.
Well, the worst part is she doing my makeup.
Ruth, you got to be careful because you could sing the phone book and I'd be like totally in.
Oh, you're very.
That's a powerful thing.
Oh,
Wow.
you're very.
Very cool. That was very cool.
Oh, thank. It's just about those of us that are lost, that are floating in the sea of life, and that, you know, it's amazing, this love, and this love will come down and reach you. And I was singing the hymn, Love Lifted Me, and I just kept thinking of that image that love comes down and pulls us out. And at the end, whether COVID, financial struggles, a lot of times we paint pictures of isolation and quarantine with our loving family. And I'm so grateful to have a peaceful home and with peaceful humans that I love, to provide just a beautiful atmosphere. But not everyone has that. Sometimes they're stuck with abusive stepfather, or, a mother who is physically abusive, or with a sibling that's cruel. And so in the midst of that, just that message that love does survive it all. It will survive. So anyway. Yeah.
No.
I pray that our conversation that we were having inspired that song.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I will share it, as I share it with my family, I want to be able to say, see, we inspired that song, through our spirits coming together. That's just like good old South, feeling it and singing it. And go ahead, girl. That's where you were. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bob, I think we might need a fourth host here in this show. We could have Ruth on every week. Wow. And I gotta say, of course, the passion, the only way I can explain it, that you put into the music, but also just, okay, I've been in opera, I'm an opera singer. Your voice, the way you use your voice is just astounding. And it reminds me of, it has so many different colors to it and just so much. Yeah.
I was watching Lori listening to you, and there was one little point where you did this very cool kind of melodic switchback thing in your voice, and Lori and I both went at the same time.
Oh, thank you.
I don't think anybody but another singer, in a way, or someone like Ray who loves music and has studied music all of his life, really can appreciate like all of the talent that goes into that. The way, it's like a poem, the way you built your song and what you did with your voice. So people just sing, and then the people sing like Ruth, not very often.
Oh, thank you.
A cappella is so beautiful. Because you know that when you do a cappella, you're coming from way deep inside of you. That's just not, this is not humming in the kitchen. And, as a kid that grew up in South Philly at Showboat and Pep's Show Bar, and Gloria Lynn and Nina Simone and Billie Holiday. These were all people, Dinah Washington. And I always say this, and I hope you've heard of her. And I think being an educator, you might have. But one of my favorite singers as a little 10-year-old boy was a singer by the name of Savannah Churchill. And Savannah Churchill came to the Earl at 9th and Market, and there was a theater called the Earl, and I was a 10-year-old kid, and she was one of the headliners. And I fell in love with Savannah Churchill, and never to be heard from again. But when I say that to people that have heard her, they know that I heard one of the most beautiful voices ever on the.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
Coach, is there footage or video or anything like that of
Savannah Churchill? I think you could probably search it out on YouTube. That's where I was a Arnett Cobb devotee. Again, as a little kid, 10, 12 years old, I loved Arnett Cobb. And what I did is I started searching out these artists that I had seen between my 10 and 18, before the Uptown became popular with all of the rock and roll shows, because rhythm and blues was changed to rock and roll by Alan Freed.
Right.
But I came from that era as a 10-year-old of going to shows and seeing Timmy Rogers and Pigmeat Markham and what they call
those names.
They went from burlesque, they were burlesque shows at the time, and they changed them over to I can't recall the title, but they were like all-star shows, and they would
almost like a review type of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we would sit there. We were welcomed in to this world as 10 and 11 and 12-year-olds to this incredible music with Earl Bostic and the Illinois Jack Kent and these. To be a young kid and exposed to this, it was just incredible to me. And I lived in Brooklyn, and so I knew that they didn't have this in Brooklyn. And I lived in Oregon, and I knew that they didn't have this in Oregon. I lived in Baltimore, and they didn't have this in Baltimore. But it was a staple of the Philadelphia culture for whatever reason. So we, again, talking about our history, it's beautiful to say that music was also a huge part of our history.
Yes.
You know, this is the kind of thing that older guys say now, like, when I was coming up, but when I was a young kid, there was such a clear demarcation between grown-ups and kids. Grown-ups were grown-ups and kids were not. And so my window into the adult world, my understanding of adult language, of being with, wanting to be a grown-up, music was my entree into that world. So when I was listening to all these folk songs and hearing all these stories, that tied into my want to grow up and sort of gave me language and perspective to do that. So when you're saying, you're in the theater and you're watching all these people sing and stuff, you're getting to hang out with the grown-ups and you're getting a window into something that is beyond the playground,
Exactly. Until what the grown-ups do is the grown-ups decide that they, at some point, particularly in Philadelphia, wanted to move on, and it became what had been rhythm and blues became rock and roll in the 60s with Motown and the Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff putting their labels together. And it was kind of a changeover from that satin tie, dining suit, gowns, late evening gowns and so forth, and ladies singing these beautiful songs to what I say rock and roll, but it's kind of all thrown in there to me because I'm with a musician or two musicians. But to me, it all kind of just came together in the 60s and 70s. And my brother and I my brother who's a musician, we talk about music all the time. And we say to each other, our lives are musicals. It's just a constant flow of music, whether it be through faith or whether it be through history.
By the way, Coach, let me throw this in. I did find Savannah Churchill "Time Out for Tears" on YouTube, and it says she was born in Colfax, Louisiana, in 1920. So, must be the singer you're talking about.
That's exactly who I'm speaking of. Yes, my mother was born in 1919, and she was born in 1920. Yes, that's very good. But that's the Savannah Churchill, and I'm, when Ruth was singing, all of those earlier historical ladies was kind of all in her singing. And I just did a piece this past weekend on Billy Paul. I grew up with Billy, and he was a North Philly kid, and I was a South Philly kid, and we had a show every Sunday at the Royal Theater, which Kenny Gamble now owns. And Billy Paul has a great history in Philadelphia, and just I don't know, it just all comes into my mind. I feel like I'm going bananas, but that's what music does to me. Music just like hits my soul, and it just comes into my brain, and I start talking about it because I just love music in that way.
Music, Ruth, you and I connected on one of my childhood favorite singers, Andre Crouch, which I know Bob and Ray,
Yes.
and I always find it amazing. That's what I love about the conversations that we're building like this, is some of the things that bring us together instead of like our culture is so pulled apart. People are so pulled apart, but there's so much in common, like love for music and food, our favorite topic, right? Food, and I could talk to someone from any culture and connect with them on food and music. Do you find that to be true, Ruth?
Yeah. I mean, especially, my background, my community and my ancestors, it was all about the table. So I learned how to dress a table from my mom, but really, really dress a table, which they don't use that terminology anymore. From my great-great-grandmother, she told me that the love in dressing the table was amazing. I learned to cook from her. I was tied to her apron strings. I just fascinated someone this old was alive and that they'd seen so much of history. So I learned to shuck corn. I learned to churn butter. I learned to, make ice cream. There was not a preservative in her kitchen cabinet, and I learned how to keep house, and so it's my language of love to my family, dressing the table, making little roses from the garden in little tiny like antique vases at just the care and making things from scratch. Like last week they had sea bass on sale, and I almost got a made sauce, and I thought, no, I'm gonna do this, and I made it, which took like an hour, all these ingredients and everything. And my husband was just like, that was so good. I felt the love in it. And I was like, yay. Yeah, because it did. I did it because, the way to a man's heart is through. But and he's a big guy, so 6'4", so I need to feed him. But that's where life comes out, that around that gathering, that idea of breaking bread together. And then certainly with music, I remember when Marian Anderson came to our childhood church at 19 de Fitzwater, which was her childhood church at Union Baptist Church. She's 90 years old. And they asked her to sing, and she, she's 90. And she said, instead, I'd like to do a duet. When I was a little girl, anytime a guest minister came or someone, they would say, who's the child soloist? Come up and sing. So the chairman of the digging board looked at me, Ruth, get up. And I was like, that's Marian Anderson. And we came together and we sang Jesus Love Me. I didn't sing a lot of it. I was in awe, so I was just harmonizing. But that it felt like an anointing, and that music does unite around the world. And it's another language that you can sing an aria, Lori, and people
I kind of like that, Larry. Aria, Larry.
Wow.
But go ahead. Okay.
But they can understand it even if you're singing it in Italian,
That's right.
Or Spanish, or they can understand it. So it even goes beyond the written word and the lyric in the sense of the feeling. And so, it's just incredible. I have a confession though, Coach. I don't want to mislead you. I am a Germantown girl, a G-Town girl, but I've been 18 years in South Philly. So I just wanted to put that in, but back to music.
I've seen you with all of when you were talking about the music earlier, and we were talking about you with respect to your bio, and I said, she's really deep into the jazz scene. She really knows. And it's funny, the more artistic you become, noted for, it's almost like there's and I don't know whether you sense that, there's like a move away from that jazz kind of background that you have. Is that accurate? I mean, in Philly?
For me, it's just like I still go to the opera. I'm a subscriber to the Philadelphia Orchestra. I went to the Philadelphia Orchestra. My parents would buy the $2 or $5, $3 tickets, and we sit all the way in the top reign of the Academy of Music, and we watch Eugene Armandi. I mean, I was tiny during that time. But Eugene Muti, so I love our foundation in the sense of music came with gospel music and also classical music. But I think at the end of the day, where I really am able to be the freest artistically is absolutely jazz. It's freeing. You can create on the spot. You're creating with others in a way that other genres don't fully allow. And you're able to communicate, and it's a democracy. It's a group of a quartet, like my quartet or my sextet or my octet. We each get a chance to say what we feel about this theme. And we pray, and then we pick from, I like that, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make it into triplets, that rhythm, or I'm going to take that and I'm going to do that chromatic slide in reverse. And it's just all these ideas coming together. Then we come back together and again state the theme. So I understand, completely what you're saying. And I have many, I love music, so I love all different types of music. But the one that I would say it this way, the one that I feel most free in singing is jazz. In the midnight hour, when I'm in trouble, it's gospel and spirituals. Go there in the midnight hour. That's what carries me through,
made a career for me with when I went into business. Every day in my automobile, every day, Hawkins singers,
Yeah.
got away.
And the Winans, right?
The Winans, but the Winans were okay. I was a Hawkins family, West, for whatever reason. Well, first of all, Jennifer loved Tremaine Hawkins, and Tremaine just hit my house with a bang. And when Tremaine hit, then I got into Edwin and the other
Yeah.
the choirs, as opposed something popular. There was a real popularity there, but there was so much work that the Hawkins family did underneath. And it just, every day, it sustained me and it helped me make a career.
Yeah.
So we've already come up on an hour, but I don't know how you guys are doing, but it's kind of like we're at the dinner party and everybody should go home, but I don't want you to go home.
Oh.
I mean, could we have a cup of coffee and continue for a few minutes?
Sure.
Okay, so, but yeah, Tremaine, she's on my top 10 list of singers. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my first concert I ever went to was Andre Crouch and the Disciples. And my mom didn't want my dad to take me because they were playing, God forbid, drums and electric guitars, the devil's music. So, my dad said, no, you need to go. So he took us and he put me up on my shoulders. And I just was in awe. I just had never heard that style of music. I watched how authentic they were in communicating the message. And from then, I mean, this wasn't necessarily my goal. It wasn't something I strive for, but I thought maybe one day I'll be able to sing like with that spirit to other people. Cause I looked at the people around me and they were just filled with joy and crying and sadness. And you got the sense that they walked out of that concert and changed. And that's the power of music. It has the beauty and the strength and the art creativeness to change you.
Bob, did you ever meet Andre Crouch? I met him a few times.
I did. About a year before he passed away. I know tons of guys who played with him, and I met him a couple times. About a year before he passed away, I was able to put a CD into his hand that I did with a couple friends of mine. We got this wackadoo idea to sort of put it through the acoustic folk filter, what we called at the time Jesus music. So we did a medley of To God Be the Glory, my tribute, and also Soon and Very Soon. We actually did a version. I had to do it. We did Oh Happy Day because everybody, that song, and it was never about a good cover. What a good cover version should do, I think, is be true to what you're trying to do, but also make you crave to go back and listen to the original and appreciate the original. So that was our whole thing, is we want to do these songs in kind of a fun acoustic way, but you need to go back to the original sources. So I was able to put that CD into Andre's hand and tell him that we were honored to sing his song. And he was in a panel discussion that I was in the audience for. So it was really kind of cool to get a little bit of FaceTime with him. I didn't know him very well, but I know lots of people who did. So.
We're all like, it's like after dinner when you're feeling all full. That's how I'm feeling right now. Just for fun, let's go back to a little bit more about Philly. Now, I think we're going to have Ruth back really soon and just talk about history and talk about the things she's doing, like the work that jazz music that she did around Frederick Douglass, and the history and the things that you have planned for that, because I think we could do a whole episode where we just talk about that, because there's so much depth. Don't you think we should do that, Coach?
Absolutely. We have not done Frederick Douglass justice at all, because again, in this musical that we're living right now, I think there's such a connection between Frederick Douglass and what he was striving for and where we are now. It seems to me there's some connectors there, and I would like to discuss that, and not in a political way, but in a very meaningful, diplomatic way, which is who I think Frederick Douglass was. I still think he's one of the greatest diplomats that ever lived.
I would love that. I would love to. There's so many layers to this great man, so many layers, and his words are prophetic. You know, in some ways, I wish he were here, right? Because his mastery of the word is amazing. But I think he would be a little sad, disappointed that we're not further along. But yeah, his words were prophetic and stands the test of time. Yeah. I would love to come back.
Yeah, we're going to do that, absolutely. And underneath all of when we share our social media and share this interview, of course, I'm going to put links to Ruth's different projects and her websites, and to show you some of the photography that she's done. It's just beautiful. And if I could indulge, myself here, Bob has a song that he was going to share with us today, and I would love for you to do that now.
All right, let me suit up here. I need an instrument, unfortunately.
Ruth plays many instruments, by the way, so I've seen it.
Flute, but I was going to bring my flute for Mercy, but it's right here. I thought, no, let's just go surround it.
Yeah, no, she
don't
did.
play guitar though. I love guitar. I need to learn.
Okay.
Bob's really good.
Okay, this is a little song that I wrote called Joy Deepest Sorrow. I want good to come after me, half as relentlessly as trouble does, like a curse. I want health to protect me, invade and infect me like disease does, but in reverse. I want sweetness and light to keep me up all night, happy hours passing without sleep. Sharp as a knife, I want love in this life to cut me fast, cut me deep. I'd like to see good fortune paint a target on my back. I want laughter to stage a surprise attack one fine day, maybe 2 or 3 in a row. Blessings are lined up, waiting to become the status quo. I don't want to be unfaithful, but I really want to know, is there a joy deep as sorrow? Joy deep as sorrow. From the days of old, the story is told about the sad fate of humankind. How at some prenatal stage or accountable age, we're all hell-bent in heart and mind. We used to call it sin, but now we're not so sure. Seems when everybody's God, then there's no need for a cure or one fine day, maybe 2 or 3 in a row. Blessings are lined up, ready to become the status quo. I don't want to be unfaithful, but I really want to know, is there a joy deep as sorrow? Joy deep as sorrow. Joy deep as sorrow, pleasure as potent as pain. stable as an earthquake, harmless as a hurricane. Inmates freed from the asylum, at long last everybody driven sane by joy as deep as sorrow, joy deep as sorrow. What if ecstasy reinvented me, so little children would point and smile? What if misery were like the lottery, all my losing tickets in a pile? An avalanche of platitudes better left unsaid, when that which does not kill me makes me wish that I was dead. Every day that I am walking, it's always something new. I want to step in a pile of good and leave it on my shoe. One fine day, maybe 2 or 3 in a row. One fine day, joy deep as sorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Wow. Oh, man. Well, by the way, we lost Coach. He said that their power went out, and they're in, he lives outside of, yeah, he lives outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, so they might be having a thunderstorm or something. But Ruth, seriously, what a pleasure. And this is kind of my fantasy show, having different music. And, of course, we know Coach was a legendary NBA player. And what a neat mix of just bringing different thoughts together. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's great. And Bob, thank you. Joy as deep as sorrow, man. That's some good theology.
Thank
And
you. Appreciate
love
it.
the lyrics and the guitar playing, definitely. And the singing. Yeah. Yeah. That's the balance, isn't it? The seesaw, joy, sorrow, joy, sorrow. Thank you for that. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful.
Well, we're going to definitely schedule you soon again. And Ruth, would you be willing to sing us one more song on the way out?
Sure. I wanted to say, Laurie, thank you so much for having me. I count it honor, everyone from, across different industries and entertainment. And so I'm really, truly honored that you asked me to come and be a part of your show. And it's a blessing. Thank you so much. I guess I should end where it all began, right? The African-American spirituals. I have so many. I'm trying to think of which one I'm going to do. Let's do, I don't know why. I guess I'll do Soon It Will Be Done. Soon it will be done with the troubles of this world. The troubles of this world. The troubles of this world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of this world. I'm going home to be with God. No more weeping and wailing. No more weeping and wailing. No more weeping and wailing. I'm going home to live with God. Soon we'll be done with the troubles of this world, the troubles of this world, the troubles of this world. Soon we'll be done with the troubles of this world. I'm going home to live with God. You're going home to live with God. We're going home to live with God.
The lack of clapping is not a lack of clapping. It's a, I don't even want to intrude with my hands after that. Wonderful.
Feel the same way. I'm kind of overcome. And by the way, I think the birds were accompanying you back there.
We have a tree right outside the window, and they are like, the cats go crazy. They're out the door meowing like, let me in. But yeah, oh wow, it's beautiful. They certainly know how to sing, the birds. Yeah.
Ruth, that was so beautiful. And let's end with, do you know a little of I'm sure you do, the history of that song and where it came from?
Sure. It goes to what Bob so generously and graciously and beautifully shared, that joy and sorrow, that tension, that connection, that path of life. So written by enslaved Africans in America, and truly they understood wanting to be done with the troubles of this world. They didn't know when freedom was coming, and didn't come for a long time for most of them. But I'll end with this. I think this story, I could go on because I've studied that for all my life, for over 35 years of the African American spirituals. But I'll end with this story, and I think this states that connection of sooner we'll be done, we'll go home to joy, we'll go home to heaven. Elsie was the matriarch slave of her plantation. And so word comes, emancipation is here. And all these slaves were like, finally we'll be free. They were, again, hoping for freedom that was not delivered, even with the Emancipation Proclamation. And they said, Elsie, will you dance? And she says, not yet. And they go around and they're dancing and singing for joy. And they say, Elsie, you got to sing. You got to sing. You're the matriarch. Everyone's waiting, the children. You lived long enough to see freedom. And she says, not yet. Then finally come pretty strongly, you must dance, Elsie, you must dance. And she said, I'll dance, but where's my mother? Where's my father? Where's my husband? Where are my children? Where are my sister? Where's my brother? Where's my uncle, aunts, nieces, and nephews? I'll dance, but not yet. And so I think that song, in his own way, in a very powerful way, Bob is leading us to, is that there's a time for dancing, but there's also a time for lamenting. And I think we as humans, once we are able and have the courage to actively be present in our lament and in our grief, as well as unspeakable joy, not happiness, which is based on circumstance, but joy sometimes in the midst of lament, in the midst of grief, there we can find beauty And so sooner we'll be done. We will be done one day because we can't live forever. We'll go on to heaven and really understand what joy is. But also we can wipe our griefs and leave them all at the feet of the throne and say, it's joy forevermore. And so those enslaved Africans whose blood is running warm in my veins, and I'm so grateful and so joyful, they understood that dichotomy, that it wasn't really a dichotomy, that it was a flow from one to another. And that's what life is.
Okay, we need to end there, Bob, because, you know.
Well, I hope I can play the any friend of Lori's card in perhaps keeping in touch with you. And I just have enjoyed this tremendously, Ruth. Thank you so much.
I would love that. My new friend. I always love meeting new friends, and you are my new friend, Bob. I would love that.
And
Lori,
we got to work it out to get in the same room together sometime. But until then, this will do.
I know I want to come visit Lori. I don't know why I'm calling you Lori. I've never called you Lori in my whole life. But Lori, I want to come so bad. We talked about that. So one of the things COVID era has taught me is don't put off for tomorrow what you could do today. And so we've got to make that happen. Oh, what a day of rejoicing that will be when we up face to face. But thank you. I don't think you talk about your art enough, so I'm going to be a little hard on you. Lori, what you do and what you create, you're artists, and you're amazing at bringing people together in community. But your art and what you do is powerful. So I hope there might be a show where you just talk about what you do and create. That's powerful, and it's a much needed voice, artistic voice in today.
That's a great word. I might just have to hijack a show and
Yeah.
put her in the guest seat.
Yes.
We
Well,
can do that.
You guys are both extraordinary, as is my tall coach, Ray Scott. And again, he, got bumped off by God, I guess. I'm just teasing.
Yeah. Let's rephrase that, okay?
I'm just kidding. I mean, like.
That's the title of my next album, Bumped Off by God. It's going to be a great album, and I'll look for it in stores soon.
But how extraordinary. I just brought these two guys together like 3 weeks ago, and they're like,
wow.
Amazing.
I told him, I said, I had no idea that I had a Ray Scott-shaped void in my life until I met him. He's just a great guy.
Everybody should have a Ray Scott in their life. Thanks, Coach. And thank you, Ruth, so much. And we'll get together again soon.
Thank you.
Blessings. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.